everybody, welcome along to Sportsbet TV with a very extra special bulletin here from me, Paul Alster. I am looking forward to Derby Day at Epsom. This is one of the most exciting days of the year. If you're a racing fan, it really is the greatest race of all. Whatever anybody else says, all the other new races that have come along over the years, the Derby is still the ultimate test of a three-year-old. And I'm really excited actually about this year's race, and I've got one for you at nice tasty double figure odds. Now that will be one of 4 selections I have for you. If you happen to be stumbling across the site here, our channel, then please press the subscribe button below this screen, and then you'll be able to hear all my regular bulletins for free. And of course, I've been doing really well, coming towards the end of the second year, showing consistent profits. And indeed, once again last week, although we didn't get a winner, we got 2 very tasty placed horses. We had, of course, Lanarkash, who would have won in another stride. I think he was just a little bit unlucky. And Universal Order ran an absolute blinder at very big odds. If he'd have got out early, who knows? But it was a lovely place double there. I hope you are on. And that meant that at the end of May, to my level £10 each way stakes, all recommendations, £407 profit if you'd have been following me. It also means that since the start of February, I'm up £700. So that is pretty good. You can't knock that. And if you do, well, you're probably a moron, as a certain person is, of course. That always likes to put in his 2 pence. But I like to hear from you and hear exactly what you think. Well, let me just say that, of course, this year the Derby is going to be without a presence that has been there for as long as most of us can remember, because earlier this week, the great Lester Piggott passed away at the age of 86. He was the most outstanding jockey of his or possibly any generation. He won the Derby 9 times. He was a multiple champion jockey, and he was poetry on motion on a racehorse. He had a very colourful life, loads of great stories. Of course, he went in the nick as well for getting to pay the taxman his dues. Indeed, the story goes that when Lester, who wasn't maybe the sharpest tool in the box, really, when it comes to finance and communication, when he was pulled in by the police for questioning at Newmarket, literally dozens of trainers and jockeys rushed to the Inland Revenue to give them money because they knew that Lester was going to be caught out, and they'd been up to the same. So really, he went down. He was the fall guy for a lot of people, poor old Lester. But he came back. Who will ever forget that win on Royal Academy in the Breeders' Cup Mile? For me, though, great memories of him. The first vivid Derby was 1977 for me, when he did that rat-a-tat-tat finish on the Minstrel to get up and beat Willie Carson on Hotgrove. Quite amazing, really. And another wonderful memory for me, because I was there, was when he won on Comanche Run in the St. Ledger back in the day to record his 28th classic victory. So he will be much missed, but he'll be fondly remembered. And indeed, this year's Derby is actually officially run in memory of Lester Piggott. So let's go to it. 4 selections for you for Derby Day at Epsom. Now, of course, there's loads of other meetings. It's ridiculous. 8 other meetings on Derby Day. They're nuts. Really, the race planners have lost the plot. John Egan in the Racing Post Friday pointing out it is just becoming ridiculous. Small fields, too much racing. You can't keep track of things, and they really need to look at it. But of course, everybody will be focusing on Epsom. And I'll take you first to the first race of the day there, which is the 2 o'clock. Now, the advance going is good to soft in places. There may be a few showers, but I'm expecting pretty decent racing ground. And the 2 o'clock is a 1.25 mile handicap for 3-year-old horses only. And there are, as ever in 3-year-old handicaps, lots of potential improvers. And amongst them is Warhorse, trained by Marco Botti, whose horses have started to run into form of late. Trainer I think you should keep an eye on over the next few weeks. His Warhorse going the right way after a win at Sandown. He's gone up a couple of pounds. Back in 4th, there was Grenoble for Willie Haggis, who reopposes, £3 better off, and now with the old face furniture on, the cheek pieces, first time. Approachability for Mark and Charlie Johnston He's an interesting horse. He was third in the listed Pontefract race in October. He'd previously been second to Grenoble, so a little bit of a form line tying in there. And then you've got box to box for Hugo Palmer, who's doing pretty well, really, since he took over for Michael Owen at his tremendous racing complex in Cheshire. And this box to box, a winner at Salisbury, gone up £3. There's also Charlie Appleby's Blue Trail, who's stepping up from a mile. So a number of really interesting horses. The market may indicate just how fancied some of those are. But my choice here is a horse I tipped you, when was it? Back on the 14th of May, when I thought he was rather unlucky. And I'm sticking with him. His name is Mr. Big Stuff, trained by Richard Spencer and the mount of young Tyler Hurd, whose £5 claim could come in very handy indeed. Now, as I say, I tipped him 3 weeks ago when he got no sort of run and finished 5th in the London Gold Cup at Newbury. Now, despite finishing 5th, I think the handicapper noted just how well he was travelling and how he probably would have got very close to winning, because unusually for a horse out of the frame, he's been put up £1. So that basically franks what I'm saying, that he was a little bit unlucky. He'd previously been second to Al Kareem, and prior to that, of course, he was a very, very promising third to none other than Desert Crown in a Nottingham maiden. And Desert Crown, of course, is sure prize favourite for the Derby later on Saturday. So if he runs anywhere near that form and gets a clear run, and of course you're never guaranteed that at Epsom, which is one of the hardest tracks, with the camber, instead of it being flat, the track, they're racing like this. So you can imagine they get so unbalanced, some of them, and they all tend to roll down towards the rail. I'd love to see him coming down the centre of the course, staying away from trouble. But as long as he gets a clear run, I think he's got a standout each way chance. At the time of this recording, which is early on Friday morning, because I've got things to do this weekend, he's 5-1, 5-1 each way, and Sky Bet are offering 5 places. So each way 5-1, 5 places. It may be that by the time you see this recording, or by the time you place a bet Saturday morning or even Saturday afternoon, you might get better. But at the time of this recording, 5-1 each way, and that is offered with a number of firms, including Sky Bet, who go the 5 places. So note that in the Epsom 2 o'clock. Let's move you on to the 2:35 race at Epsom then, the Group 3 Princess Elizabeth Stakes. And on this Platinum Jubilee weekend, it'd be great to see a really tremendous finish to the race that's named after the Queen when she was still a princess, of course. It's over the extended mile, Group 3 for fillies. A race that hasn't seen too many big odds winners. Indeed, the longest odds in the last decade was Summer Romance, who won for Charlie Appleby at 9-1 in 2020. And of course, Arabian Queen won for the now retired David Ellsworth back in 2015. And you might recall that Arabian Queen then went on later that season to spring a massive surprise in the Juvemonte International at York, where she floored the odds on Golden Horn at 50-1. So this is a race that can produce some really good winners. Now, the interesting thing here is that the first 2 in the betting are both owned by the same owners, the Cheveley Park stud. Bashkarova, who is a 9-4 shot for William Haggis, and Potapova, who is 7-2 shot for Sir Michael Stout. Now, Bashkarova beat a horse called Mrs. Fitzherbert a half a length last time out, and Mrs. Fitzherbert reopposes, so there really shouldn't be very much between them. That was in a mile Goodwood listed contest. Then you've got Potapova, the second of Cheveley Park's runners, who beat a horse called Roman Mist, who again reopposes here. And that was in the listed Snowdrop Stakes on the all-weather track at Kempton in April. So those 4 horses have form lines that are very closely tied in. And in my view, there's really not very much to choose between them. Now, there's an outsider in this race that I've very seriously considered, and its name is Statement. It's making its debut for the Kevin Ryan stable, having formerly been with Martin Mead. Martin, who runs a horse called Technique in this race, that's already been quite well backed early on Friday. Now, Statement was actually bought out of Mead's stable to go to Kevin Ryan for a lot of money. They paid 300,000 guineas. And when you think that a guinea is still £1.05, that is one hell of a lot of money, especially for a filly and she was bought at the Tattersalls December sales about 6 months ago. She was actually third in this race last year, and she ran a good race because she lost a shoe and was unbalanced in the closing stages. She goes well fresh as well. And last year, she was only beaten a short head first time out in the Group 3 Fred Darling Stakes. That was the race won by Alcohol Free, who went on to be a Group 1 winner. So I think there's no doubt that statement could well be overpriced, 25 to 1 when I looked. And I was very seriously interested. I might actually have a little bit of a saver on statement, but I'm not putting her up, but I might have a bid on just in case, as they say. But my choice here is Majestic Glory. And Majestic Glory, filly by the great Frankel, is trained by Andrew Balding and the mount of David Probert. Now, she had 2 wins last summer. She won at Newmarket over 6 furlongs in a novice stakes, and then she stepped up to 7 furlongs and won the Group 3 Sweet Solera Stakes on the July course at Newmarket, where she beat Wild Beauty, who, of course, this year has gone on to win the Fred Darling. Now, she went on to find good to firm ground against her. So I think the fact there is a little bit of juice in the ground is going to help her on Saturday. That was when favourite for the Group 2 Rockfell Stakes at Newmarket last autumn. And then she was probably over the top, but she wasn't disgraced when down the field in the Fillies Mile, the Group 1 at the end of the season. Now, for me, a really encouraging thing here is that she's shown that she's trained on. A lot of horses don't train on the fillies. And she was a very good length and 3/4 third to Wild Beauty in the Fred Darling. And she was really getting going at the end of the race. So I think the mile, the extended mile, is going to help her. And of course, a dam won over 10 furlongs as well. So I think she must go well. She's also got a hood on for the first time because she was a little bit buzzy in the preliminaries at Newbury. And that should just settle her down. Now, she has a rating here of 101, which is only £3 below the favourite, Bashkarova. So she really does have a proper chance on the form book. And I'm very interested at the 10 to 1 offered each way for Majestic Glory. That's with Bet Victor, Boyle Sports, Betway and Ladbrokes at the time of this recording. It might be that by the time you come to take a look at them, there are better odds on offer. But Majestic Glory is my choice, with the danger being the big price statement on debut for Kevin Ryan. So I'm expecting a bit of a turn up in this year's Princess Elizabeth Stakes at Epsom at 2:35. So now we come to the big one, the Epsom Derby. As I said earlier, the greatest horse race in the world still. And it is just that supreme test of not only the horse, with the uphill, the downhill, the rounding Tatton corner, the camber, so many unusual things about this race, but also the jockeys. We've seen so many great jockeys over the years get it wrong. Even the great Pat Edry on El Gran Senor, Greville Starkey on Dancing Brave, and so many others over the years. You really do have to get it right. And so many memories for me, as I mentioned, the Minstrel was my first clear memory of the Derby, but that defeat of El Gran Senor in 1984 was incredible. Of course, Dancing Brave getting beaten was another one I'll never forget at the hands of Sharastani. But then brilliant winners. And for me, one that tends to be forgotten, Troy, Willie Carson for Dick Hearn. Troy, have a look at the video of Troy's win. I think it was back in 1979. I don't think I've ever seen a horse quicken quite as well in a Derby as Troy. And of course, the next year, Willie went on to win the Derby on Hembit, who actually broke his leg inside the final furlong and still won. Probably the bravest, toughest Derby winner of all time. In my view, Hembit, not the best by a long way. Then you've got Shergar, of course, who was sensational in 81. Generous, absolutely brilliant for Paul Cole. Galileo, probably my all-time favourite. See the Stars. And then the likes of Pourmoise, ridiculous victory, Golden Horn and others. I wonder if we're going to see a great winner of the Derby this year. Well, I'm already starting my Derby betting in negative territory because I went in on Aidan, who I tipped to you for the 2,000 guineas, and he ran into an each-way bet for us, finishing 4th there. And after Roger Varian said he was going to go to the Derby on Monday, earlier this week, I stepped in. despite having promised myself I wouldn't be getting involved in anti-post because of all the problems you can have. So I was absolutely stunned when he wasn't declared at the 48-hour stage. And that really was a bit of a blow there. So now we're playing a little bit of catch up. Now, I think the market has probably got it right here because Sir Michael Stout's Desert Crown is unbeaten in 2. He won that Nottingham Maiden I mentioned earlier. And then he absolutely dotted up in the Dante Stakes. It was a terrific performance. And he beat Royal Patronage, who goes in the Derby. He beat him very, very easily, and I don't have too much doubt that he'll stay. Will he handle the track? Well, Sir Michael Stout has won it 5 times. He knows the type of horse needed to win here. But of course, he's won on flat galloping tracks, Nottingham and York. Epsom is a different kettle of fish. If I was to have one running for my life in this race, it would probably be Desert Crown. But I don't think he's a real betting opportunity for, certainly for me and the likes of you who come on here and like to find one at a decent price. I expect him to go very well, though. Now, of course, Aidan O'Brien is a genius trainer. He's won 6 of the last 10 derbies, and he's got a few representatives here. And the principal amongst them is Stone Age, who ran away with the Group 3 Derby trial at Leopardstown last time out. He was visually very, very impressive. He beat Glory Days, who's going to go again in the Derby, and good luck to his connections at 3-figure odds. But you remember last year, Bolshoi Ballet did a similar thing, and he really bummed out in the Derby itself. I'm just not convinced that that particular Derby trial is quite worth the plaudits it's been getting. If you look as well, it's 20 years since a horse went on from that race to win the Derby. That was High Chaparral. Prior to that, Galileo won it. But in the last 20 years, although Aidan's had a host of winners, he struggled to get one to follow up at Epsom. So because of that, I'm against Stone Age. Changing of the Guard won the Chester Vase, and Aidan's Star of India won the D Stakes. I just wasn't convinced by either of them as being really good Derby trials, even though it's great to see a horse win around Chester because it shows that they're agile and can handle an unusual left-handed track. Of course, it's flat as a pancake, of course, but you need to be pretty nimble-footed to win around Chester. Here's Badil, interesting runner for Donica O'Brien, Aidan's son. He was very, very game when he beat Buckaroo, who's subsequently been well beaten at the Irish 2000 Guineas. But that was in the Group 3 Ballysack Stakes, which is a good Derby trial. That was in early April. And the dam of Piz Badil is very closely related to the Oaks winner, Light Shift. So I'd be very optimistic Piz Badil will stay. And I think of the O'Brien runners, the O'Brien family, Piz Badil might well turn out to be as good as any of them. There are unexposed horses in the field. 2 from 2, unbeaten is West Wind Blows for Simon and then Crisford. He won at Nottingham, a novice stakes by 5 lengths. And who knows? He could be anything. And then Westover for Rafe Beckett, who's better known as a trainer of top-class fillies, really. He won the Sandown Classic trial, but I think there's more needed. Now, Charlie Appleby has won 2 of the last 4 derbies, of course, with horses owned by Sheikh Mohammeds Godolphin. He won it with Massar at 16-1 in 2018. And then last year, he did it again with Adea at 16-1. And this year he runs 3. Now, I just want to say a word about this, and this might, not please everybody. But of course, these horses are all owned by Sheikh Mohammed. And I know that the racing world sort of bow down to Sheikh Mohammed because of all the money he's put into the sport and everything else. But he has been involved in so many controversies. You remember the business with Enki and the St. Ledger. You remember all sorts of other things going on with the drugging of racehorses, not only in Britain, but also in the Middle East, where the Sheikh was involved with a long distance horse of his own that was found to have been drugged. Then, of course, you've got the fact that he was found guilty, Sheikh Mohammed, in the British courts of potential major crimes and forced to pay a huge amount of money to his ex-wife, Princess Haya of Jordan. And, of course, there's accusations to do with kidnapping and all. I just don't understand how the racing industry still turns a blind eye to this. Very little is mentioned of it in the Racing Post. Nobody asked where Princess Haya was. very shortly after she disappeared and fled with her children for fear for her life, allegedly. To me, it just seems ridiculous that somebody that is involved in so many major crimes is still a major racehorse owner. If it was anybody else, I think that they would be barred, but not so Sheikh Mohammed of Dubai. And there's many political reasons behind that. I'm not going to go into it, but I just think people should step up, and the journalists as well. I'd love to hear them just being a bit more forthright about this. I know they all like their free trip to the Dubai World Cup. I'm not looking for a free trip. I'm just saying it how it is. I don't think he and one or two other people who have dubious backgrounds, whether they should be involved in owning racehorses is quite another question. But he's got 3 runners here, and looking at them, Nation's Pride, of course, was supplemented, and William Buick has chosen to ride him. Only rated 88 when he won in February, and then he beat Huya Mal, who reopposes in the Derby, in the 7 furlong listed Newmarket stakes, by 7 lengths rather, in the listed Newmarket stakes. Well, he is on a 5-timer, but I don't know quite how good that form was against Huya Mal. He could be improving greatly, and I know Appleby, who's a very good trainer, believes he has done. But I think he's got it to prove. Then you've got Walk of Stars, who James Doyle is on. He won the 3-runner conditions race at Newbury over 10 furlongs in April. And then he was second to United Nations in the Lingfield Derby trial, which is often a fair guide to Epsom. But I've looked at this many times, and even given the aforementioned points I've made about the allegations to do with Sheikh Mohammed and all that, I do think he could, well, his horses could be in the winner's enclosure. He won't be there. I don't think he's allowed to be on a British racecourse. After much thought, my choice for the Derby is Nahani. And I'm just tipping here Adam Kirby to spring a surprise and win the Derby for the 2nd year running. Now, Nahani is the lowest rated of the 3 Godolphin runners, but I think he might have been really underestimated. He's won 3 of his 4 starts. Indeed, his only defeat came on his debut when he lost out by half a length in a 1.5 mile Kempton Novice Stakes. And that was as recently as January. This horse did not run at 2 years old. And indeed, apart from the rank outsider El Habib, who's running to give his owners a bit of a jolly at Epsom, he's the only horse in the field who didn't run as a 2-year-old. He was very late maturing. So because of that, he's gone somewhat under the radar. Now, he went back to Kempton after losing out by half a length on debut, and then he won really nicely a 12 furlong novice stakes. The second horse has won since, even though it was only in a little race. And then on April the 1st at Leicester, on good to soft ground, running on turf for the first time, he won a novice stakes under a penalty in fabulous style. He was blinkered first time there. He beat a horse called Chairman by 9 lengths. He was so impressive, and Chairman has come out and won twice since. The 3rd horse has won since. The 4th horse hasn't run since, but the 5th has run since and won. And the form of that Leicester race, I think, is red hot. Now, he was up in class, but he went down in trip to 1.25 miles at Epsom in the listed Blue Ribbon trial, and he looked like he was going to be swallowed up, having been prominent all the way, but he fought on really well, and he was really seeing it out well over what for him was an absolute bare minimum of 1.25 miles. The 4th horse was United Nations, and he, of course, went on to win the Lingfield Derby trial and beat one of the Godolphin horses that's going to run at Epsom. Is a much shorter price than Nahani. So I don't quite understand why Nahani is as big as he is. So in summary, for the Epsom Derby, Nahani is my choice. Here's why. We already know that, like most of the other runners in the field, he handles the track. He's been there and done it. He stays. He's won over 1.5 miles. There's quite a lot here with question marks about stamina. He seems to be improving all the time. He's got a great attitude. The ground is no problem because he's won on good to soft and on the all-weather, equivalent to a decent surface. He races prominently as well. And as we know, at Epsom, you can often get into trouble and hard luck stories. So if he can stay prominent, he'll be out of trouble and trying to make the best of his way home. He's also got last year's winning rider, and Kirby was brilliant on a day last year. So given all the above, and having mentioned that if I was to have one run for my life, it would be Desert Crown, but at 15 to 8, I wouldn't have it. And with Nahani, each way 25 to 1, 4 places offered at this point. There may well be more. I think there'll be plenty of firms going 5 places. So shop around for that as they try to get your money in the hours leading up to the race. But the 4 places available are 25 to 1 with Bet365 and Hills at the time of this recording. Nahani is my choice for the Epsom Derby. And then finally, and very briefly now, the Epsom 5:15, a mile and a half handicap, run over the Epsom course and distance after the big race itself has just settled down. A very open race in which the Crisfords, Arday, was a real eye-catcher at Kempton last time out. Farhan is interesting. He's reunited with Holly Doyle for the first time since the pair won the November handicap. That was for John Butler. And then David Menicia has a horse called Winter Reprise, who was narrowly beaten in a race in France last time out, and he makes some appeal. But my choice, my 4th and final selection for Derby Day in the Epsom 5:15 is Solent Gateway, who's trained by Hugo Palmer and is the mount of the very exciting young apprentice, Harry Davies, who claims £5. Now, this horse actually stays 2 miles. Indeed, he won over 2 miles at the very sharp Chester racecourse in August last year off 84. He was beaten, though, just half a length over the course and distance at Epsom in the Great Metropolitan Handicap at April, which is a very good trial for this race. He had to wait for a run, just couldn't get out in time, a typical Epsom unlucky loser. He then ran 2 free when well backed for the Chester Cup over 2¼ miles earlier. Well, it was actually last month now, wasn't it? It was only 13 to 2 for the Chester Cup. Now, the jockey booking of Harry Davies really appeals, that £5 claim. Hugo Palmer is in form. This horse actually won on Derby Day last year, taking the 1¼ mile handicap. So I think that he has a major chance at a course that he runs really well. So Solent Gateway for me to win the 5:15, 6 to 1 each way, 4 places, Bet365 and Betway are the best offers at the time of this recording on Friday morning. So that's my view of how things may well go on Derby Day. I'll be having a little multiple to see how these go, and you consider them and decide whether you're going to include them in your bets. But whatever you choose for Derby Day or elsewhere on Saturday, I wish you the very best of luck. And of course, I'll be back next weekend as we start our build-up towards Royal Ascot, which starts just a few days after that. But for now, from me, Paul Alster, looking ahead to the Platinum Jubilee Epsom Derby in memory of the great Lester Piggott. I'll say goodbye for now. I'll see you same time next week. All the best.